salutations, everyone. I'm of course Samus, and we're going to be doing a quick build guide here. Kind of working through how I do these. I guess we're going to call it an Inquisiwiz or Wizaquiz builds, and how I kind of prioritize things on these tutorial videos. I actually, whenever I do these, I get asked a whole lot about how I level them up and what it is I find to be important. So whenever I do that, I reset my trees and I kind of just step through how I level the monsters so you can see it from beginning to end. A couple of things are going on with my character that other characters don't have, and I've been working really hard at it. The first thing is, you may notice I have 10 racial points. If you don't have racial points, sometimes it matters and sometimes it doesn't. This build, in my opinion, doesn't really rely on the racial points that you get from, you know, having a +2 racial tome and having a bunch of past lives, although that is what I'm working towards. So it is something that I really like, and I liked how it played with this build in particular. You may notice that I have on my bar here that's now all funky, I have both Dragon Breath and Memory of Flight. Both of them are pretty high up in the tree, and I feel like they are really important out of the Dragonborn tree. So I'm just going to spend points basically the exact same way that I did before. Basically the idea is that, I think that's right. Let me double check my notes. Boop. Yeah. Double check my notes here as I work my way up this tree to spend those 10 points. Oh, we spent 1 extra point. We have 1 more point this way. So action boost costs 2, and I only had 10 points, but that's okay. We'll just spend. We'll pretend I didn't spend this point yet. There we go. That's what we'll do. We'll pretend I hadn't spent that point yet. So those are my 10 points in my racial tree to just kind of ease my way up. Right? I like the way this felt. I really do enjoy the Dragon Breath. I think it's a fun ability. It costs no spell points to activate, and you can maximize and power it, all the good things that you would any other build. Okay, so at level 1, I take Maximize. Right. Also, level 1 is Artificer. I always do that when I'm doing trap-based classes to make sure that I get the maximum number of skill points out of my in-base classes, right? So max out my intelligence, then I do enough dexterity that with whatever tomes I have, I qualify for whatever feats I need. I make sure my constitution is at least 16, and then I kind of fill things in as leftover. So, like, if you're going to be going for improved precise shot, you need to make sure that with your tome you hit, I think, a 21. That kind of stuff. Check the wiki for those things. If you're not that worried about it because you're not going to have improved precise shot, then don't worry about it. Put that stuff in Constitution and in Charisma or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. Just the way that I particularly build this particular build, my primary stat is Intelligence, and then Dexterity and Constitution, then Charisma, so on down the line. So Maximize was number 1 for me at level 1. And at level 1, the way I like to spend my initial points is I take Inquisitive and Dual Shooter. Okay? Those are the things that I find the most important at the first levels, because I want to have my 2 crossbows. Doubling your damage early is, well, it's doubling your damage, right? Like, even if you're not using like your intelligence to hit or your intelligence to damage, just being able to double those opportunities, especially at super low levels, is really good. That being said, my very next handful of points will be Agent of Good and Strategic Combat. Now, for me, I have a free universal tree point, so my Agent of Good is quote unquote free. So then by level, like rank what, 2 in when I take my first level wizard, I have my strategic combat, I have my int to damage. To that effect, let's talk about level 2. Level 2 is where I take in power. So I already have it maximized, I already have in power. I've now taken a level of wizard, and I'm already down the path that 90% of my damage is coming from my crossbows, but every other point of damage that I have firing away with breath weapons, a handful of spells. Sonic Blast is my most important wizard spell at low levels, and the primary reason for that is because I use it to break boxes, as well as it's got a nice long range and a chance to stun monsters. That's up to you whether you want to prioritize it next or not, but that's where I kind of go. Level 3, I take Completionist. It's, you know, if you have it, you should take it, and I take it as soon as possible. That's one of the goals that I built on this character was to have Completionist, work on the racial stuff, blah, blah, blah. So it really kind of makes sense to me. After that, I go up Traveler's Toughness. It seems like a no-brainer. I start going up Know the Angles. Again, it seems like a no-brainer. Now you have 9 points in the tree. You want to get to Strategic Combat. So you can spend 2 points to grab an int here, or a lot of other of these abilities that are really good take 2 points. I typically err on the side of I want Harper Leadership. You've seen me do this before. You've heard me talk about it before. Harper Leadership is just good. +2 to all your hireling stats, charmed monsters, etc., etc. You know I lean on charms, or you know I lean on charmed monsters for combat often, but I also lean really heavily on hirelings, especially healing hirelings, especially like little Ellery. So for already having Druid past lives, my boat buff gives my hirelings extra stats, and a Harper Leadership, all those add up to more divine vitalities for Ellery to heal people, or to give me mana back. So I've talked about it before. My Ellery hits a little more than 300, almost 400 points of mana back on average use every 5 minutes if I want. So you figure your average quest, maybe you use her once, maybe you use her twice. If you're looking for extra mana, that's basically a mnemonic potion every time you use her for what? One extra spell, like one extra point that you need to be able to get up to insightful damage. Seems like a no-brainer. Speaking of no-brainer, then we move into Strategic Combat 2. That lets us have our intelligence to damage. And this is how I prioritize the low levels. After this, I might wax and wane a little bit, kind of figuring out where I want to go, how I want to do things, how I want my gear to look like. But this initial, again, you may or may not have racial points to worry about. If you don't, I wouldn't worry about them. But if you do, or if you follow basically this start, your ranged wizard will be very successful, I feel like, especially for the early levels. So what, we spent 12, 15, roughly 15 points, so we're level 3 now, maybe almost level 4. It's not too bad, right? You got your dual crossbows and blah, blah, blah. If you start moving into Reapers at this point, you need a Ghost Touch weapon. Because we don't have the Eldritch Knight in position yet, right? So you want to make sure you have your Ghost Touch crossbow from Borderlands. You have a Ghost Touch gem that you farmed up before. Stuff like that. Okay? That being said, this is where I start to work on my Eldritch Knight. Once I have my into intelligence, once I have my double crossbow. Again, this doesn't have to be that good to start carrying early. You can kind of rely on good crossbows, right? So, yeah, this point is basically wasted because we're going to be ranged. But all of a sudden, you start dumping points in toughness. You dump points into improved mage armor. You grab shield. You're good to go. You can prioritize these however you want. But for me, I'm going to be honest with you. I like to take improved mage armor right away. You'll notice that my mage armor is grayed out over here. Then I start taking hit points until I can take my spell sword. After Spell Sword, I'll go ahead and I'll grab my Improved Shield. And then we'll kind of reevaluate the situation depending on gear. So we have now spent, what, 30... It says 33 points. Let's see, 12, 7, and 3. We'll call it 32. We're pretty close, right? We're almost there. I should put us... I have to math. I'm not going to math on camera. So let's pretend we're getting close to level 7, right? At level 7, I get my wizard... Oh, we should talk about level order real fast, too. So I talked about level 1 being my first Artie level. Then I take my 3 wizard levels. And what the 3 wizard levels do is let you get to your spell sword. So you want to get those pretty quickly. Then the question becomes, how late are you going to wait to get your second Artie level so you can have a rune arm? For me, the answer is usually around level 5 or level 6, depending on how I feel. If I feel like I can hold out a little bit later, I'll try to get to level 3, or I'll try to get to level 5 wizard spells. So I have... Try to get to level 5 wizard, so I have level 3 spells. Ha! I did it. Finally. Level 3 wizard spells opens up a lot of really interesting options for you. If we take a look at my spell list over here at level 3, they're not going to look that exciting, right? I have Displacement, I have Haste, I have Rage, Suggestion, Frost Lance. But those are actually amazing for these kind of builds, right? Displacement, Haste, Rage. You're talking about defensive, offensive, and the occasional extra defense, right? More hit points are often very good. Frost Lance, I think actually for this particular build was my primary offensive spell for quite a long time. I don't really think I cast much of anything else. I do have a Snowball Swarm. It may also count, but especially for early Reapers, a maximized and power Frost Lance basically deletes low level Reapers. You're talking about, let's actually look at the spell here for a second. You get 1 lance for every 4 levels beyond 3rd. So at level 7 you'll get 2 lances, and you're talking about 45 plus 20 cold damage per lance. You see what I mean? It basically is delete that Reaper, because those Reapers below level 10 are only going to have like 90 hit points. This thing kind of gets the job done, especially when you add in your cold spell power. Also at low levels for this particular build, again, I did like the cold for low level stuff. I used I think it's called a Devourer. It is the rune arm from, I'm going to say Cult of the Six. Now, another thing that's kind of particular about a lot of my gear is that any of the rune arms pre this Cannith crafting system, I had taken the opportunity and put a Master's Touch augmentation on them, so they are 2 levels lower. So my cold rune arm that would normally be level 7 if you farmed it up today, I could use at level 5 because it's 2 levels lower. The same thing for like a lot of my miscellaneous older rune arms. However, a lot of the new rune arms, I'm like everybody else, right? Devourer's Hunger is level 7 now. But like the Hand of the Tombs didn't have an opportunity to do that. Discipliner didn't have the opportunity to do that. Quarantine, not a thing. Whirling Words, not a thing. Dumpster Fire, not a thing. Astral Projector, not a thing. So a lot of the new rune arms that I lean on post level 10 is not a thing I can do. That being said, I did take the opportunity for the other ones. Like, I think I have a level 7 recoil. I think I have a level 1 flicker, that kind of thing. So where you want to take your second artificer level will vary, and the reason it'll vary will be based off of, in my opinion, when you want your rune arm, how quickly you want that extra damage, and how far you can shove that extra rogue level off so you can play catch up on your skills. So when you're doing this kind of thing and you're playing with your skills, every time you take a wizard level, you're talking about spending 2 points on something, right? So if you're doing disable device, that's 2 points. If you're doing search, there's 4 points. Spellcraft is another point, so you're at 5 points. If you're like me and you want to have spot, now you're at 7 points. And if you want to do UMD, now you're at 9 points. That adds up really quickly. So a lot of people will basically leave off something like UMD or one of the other important skills, and then when they're ready, they'll play catch up and they'll take their artificer level where you'll get like 14 skill points or whatever the number is, and you'll be able to like catch up your UMD. Go, okay, UMD is going to go from 4 now because I didn't have 2 points to level it up. I'm going to power it up after I put 1 point in search, spell pot, spellcraft, spot, etc. That's going to give me all these points to power up UMD again. Now, speaking of your skills, certain skills have different plateau places in them. UMD is an easy one to look at. Depending on what kind of scrolls you're going to be firing off, it's very easy to know when to stop. For example, Resurrection scrolls have a UMD check of 42. You might look over here and go, Samus, your UMD check is 43. But I stopped putting points into it after rank 15 because of past lives, gear that I'm wearing, stuff I have access to. And this is not counting me casting a GH on myself or really even putting on like a charisma item. Like, this is just past lives and shenanigans in general. So keep your eye on that, because suddenly you might open lock, for example. I have 8 ranks in open lock, and that gives me a 34. I put on an open lock item, 41. That lets me get most of the locks in the early game. After level 20, different story. I would need a much larger open lock item. But for level 1 to 20, this is fine. Post level 20, yeah, you probably have to get a plus 15 open lock item. You need to make sure you have plus 5 thieves tools, etc., etc. And maybe it'll take you a few rolls. But to me, that's a fine trade-off to be able to diversify my enhancements instead. Alright. So, have we got to level 10 yet? I don't think we have. Level 9 is where I take Precise Shot. I always am hesitant to take ranged feats on this build until after I've decided I'm definitely done with Artificer levels. There's a little bit of wiggle room, like maybe you take a 3rd Artificer level. I think there's an awful lot of value in a 3rd Artie level, particularly if you like to free up some enhancement points or move some enhancement points around, particularly out of the Harper Agent tree. Artificers have the ability to cast potentially 2 enchant weapon spells at the same time. There's 2 different classes, I guess you could call them. One is like a traditional weapon buff, like +1 weapon or elemental weapons, stuff like that. But another one can only be cast on himself, and it's into hit or into damage. Into damage is a 3rd level Artie spell, so you need to be level 5. But into hit is level 2, which means you only have to be level 3 to make it work. So every once in a while I'll like walk back and forth, decide how I want to do things. And also being level 3 Artie unlocks the 3rd tier of a lot of these, or the 4th tier of a lot of these abilities, which sometimes I'm on the fence on. So in this case, I decided I definitely didn't want to take a 3rd Artie level because I wanted to have more wizard capability. So once I decided I was going to definitely have as much extra wizard levels as possible, is where I decided, okay, I should start taking my ranged feats. So like I said, in this case, level 9, I took Precise Shot. Alright, let's look at our enhancements until roughly level 10, right? So with Spell Sword active, we now have Ghost Touch, as long as we remember to turn on our rune or turn on our ability. which if anyone has watched my training videos, you can tell when I start recording each day because I literally don't remember half the time to turn on my Eldritch Knight weapon to damage. But when you start getting close to level 10, you have to make a decision. And that decision really comes down to, okay, what's the gear that I'm going to be wearing? And in this case, usually at level 10, let me pull up my gear because I'm still wearing some of my level 10 gear. You start wearing the Silent Avenger set. Now, the Silent Avenger set consists of a outfit or some sort of armor slot, a cloak, and a belt. Now, the cloak and the belt, it does a couple of weird things for intelligence-based builds, right? The first thing is that you can't easily slot in one of the Ravenloft intelligence belts as your go-to cloak, intelligence cloak. Otherwise, it'd be very easy to just slide in your intelligence in your cloak slot and never worry about it again. But because the part of the set does involve that, you have to be a little bit more creative. You have to use like a goggle, or you have to use like a crafted trinket or something to be able to fit in your intelligence, which makes some other gearing a little bit more complicated. But for me, the big question for the gearing, especially particularly with your sets, is how big of a armor can you fit in? In this case, the Ravenloft armor is not that big because for this set, the heaviest armor you can get away with is a light armor with the Mist-Laden investments. But that still means we have an arcane spell failure of 10. So you have two options. You can start going up the Eldritch Knight tree, taking things like shield training and whatever, which is not something that I'm a huge fan of. I'm not using a shield. I'm not going to do the shield failure, even though this does help. But however, if you take a notice, when you have Imbue the Blade with 10 points in the tree, your melee weapons are spellcasting implements, and you gain quick draw feat, which that doesn't matter so much, but you get minus 15 arcane spell failure from equipped armor, which does matter. It matters quite a bit. So in this case, what I've been doing is I've been taking Mythic Wards. That gives me 10 MMR, and I just go ahead and I put all the points in it, and then bam, I can take Imbue the Blade, and then that means I've locked down my 10 points for sure. I actually have 11 now, and then I'm a big fan of Arcane Barrier. Arcane Barrier automatically goes off when your hit points hit 50%, and then all your damage gets reduced by another 25 for 20 seconds while it's running. Basically, for me, it's like, pay attention to your hit points, stupid. You need to know what's going on. And again, I try to do that around level 10. This way I can fit in the biggest, heaviest armor that I want for the set that I plan on using. Now, if you're... that you might get more mileage out of that depending on which set you decide to wear. Okay, that's up to you. But for me, I like having the MMR PRR. To the maximum where I actually really like having the improved shield filled all the way up for that extra 10 PRR as well. Alright, so now at this point is when I start going up my Inquisitive tree. And a lot of people are going to go, but Samus, you're almost level 12. There's no way you're going to get there. And you're right. I'm not going to get to No Holes Barred. I'm deferring the pleasure of No Holes Barred until around level 14 is usually where I'm able to take it. Which means I have to rely on a lot of other things first. In my case, I tend to rely on Reaper's Strike and spells. Which is part of the reason that I'm a wizard and not an artificer or whatever. So let's go up this tree. I like to take Law on your side. I like to grab my Wand and Scroll Mastery from here because it's easy to pick up Wand and Scroll Mastery in this tree. You could also pick it up over here in the Eldritch Knight tree, but I like it over here because we're trying to get our 40 points eventually in the Inquisitive tree, right? Also, you might look at it and go, why don't you just take both? We can't take both. Once you accept Wand and Scroll Mastery here, I will cancel out over here. Okay, we'll just kind of work our way up the tree a little bit. This is where you get your Mind Like Iron, aka your auto search. big fan. You've noticed that for sure. Grab our intelligence. This is where you have to kind of make some defer the pleasure type moments or not even worry about it. If you take ask questions, let's do this the other way. If you take shoot first, actually let's close that. Let's go up this tree and okay, except here because we're going to take those. So if you shoot first, your only option after the fact is ask questions later. Okay, so shoot first is a pretty good little attack. I'm a big fan actually. 3 weapon damage on successful attack. Your opponent gets a stack of shot wound effect, which does 1d6 damage per character level every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. Range of skill power, blah blah blah. It's a dot, right? I like the dot. However, the ask questions later is kind of pointless, right? When you use diplomacy that has a stack of shot wound on them, they get crushing despair. I really don't care. I just want them dead. I don't care about that. So if you do it the other way around and you ask questions first, you get a bonus that gives plus 20 to your diplomacy, which again doesn't really matter. However, shoot later gives you a plus 5 weapon attack bonus. This attack gets plus 2 critical threat range and plus 2 critical multiplier, which is huge. That is a big boy boost. That's like, bam, gotcha. So I actually have really grown to like shoot later. Doesn't mean don't take shoot first and then retrain, because I typically will, but that's kind of the idea. Over here in Inquisition style, I take double shot. Obviously over here on law on your side, we take that, and over here we take int. Int is good. We want the int. The True Scene effect is also really nice. It gives you plus 1 to critical threat range and multiplier with your crossbows, and also a bunch of extra dice to your law on your side. So now again we're around level 14. What are we missing? At level 12 I took Heighten and Precision. Around this level, around level 12 is where I start to notice things like web are starting not to stick as well. Yeah, basically web not sticking as well is where I like to start taking Heighten, and I'll basically heighten web. Anything else in particular that I heighten right off the top of my head? No. Sometimes I'll heighten. Yeah, I'll heighten like Electric Loop here. It's the only other like level 2 spell that's heightened, I think. Basically crowd control type effects. And then of course Precision is just, extra to hit for not a lot of missing, especially if you're running around like I do all the time. It really helps, which is the reason why you take a build like this, I think, is so you can stay agile and avoid damage, hopefully, with your WAS skills. Alright, so as soon as possible, we obviously get our no holes barred. I've been experimenting with Arresting Assault. It's okay. You could take it or leave it. It costs 1 point. I don't know. It's kind of like a mass stun sometimes. I don't know. I will take it again just because. Improved Uncanny Dodge. Keep an eye out on this. JavaBot has untrained several times to get rid of Improved Uncanny Dodge, and somehow every time I retrain enhancements, I realize that I still have Improved Uncanny Dodge, and JavaBot is a rogue and has it for free. So if you don't have Uncanny Dodge other ways, I would recommend taking it. Obviously, otherwise, keep an eye on it. Not worrying about it. And then the Inquisitor path, I like to take Vigilante. Yeah, it turns your law dice into, I think, a little bit less as compared to other stuff, right? So if you take Jaded, your law and your dice are D8s. But this is still just as good for me, and I like the fact that it hits everything, as opposed to just the opposite alignments. So I like taking Vigilante. Undaunted you take whenever you can, which is level 18, which is forever away. So that is where my character would be if I did not have some Dragonborn stuff that I also wanted. If I didn't have racial stuff over here, what I would probably start doing is I would finish picking up the Eldritch Knight stuff, right? Like, this is very easy, in my opinion, to pick up. You can start grabbing some more intelligence. Intelligence here, intelligence here. You know, you can eat away a little bit more intelligence. Some extra critical, some extra intelligence. Does this actually work for us? No, not really. You can take Armored Arcana and just straight up not worry about your armor as long as it is medium or less. 15% is usually enough for me to not have to worry about it. The next time we upgrade our armor is at level 15 for Shroud stuff. Or, sorry, not Shroud stuff. For Sharn things. And that's high enough level that I can also slot in a spell failure reduction slot into the armor somewhere. And that kind of cancels things out a little bit. I don't care for Knight's Transformation if you're ranged. I would stay away from it. We don't mess with either of these because we're not melee. Same thing with this. A lot of these abilities start to become, you want to be melee. And that's not what this build is about. So Eldritch Knight starts kind of falling away from me, right? So let me close this and reopen it. So what I would do if I didn't have a bunch of racial stuff that I wanted is I would start looking at the Pale Master Tree. The Pale Master Tree's got a lot of really good low-hanging fruit, in my opinion. So, yeah, Dark Reapening isn't great, but you're picking up this Deathless Vigor. There's another 60 hit points. Super easy. You've heard me talk about Cloak of Night before. It's one of my favorite abilities. I just like having it. The same thing with, you have two options in my opinion. You can use Shroud of the Wraith for some extra defensive capabilities, or you could do Zombie for some extra offensive capabilities. A little bit extra damage. Yeah, your attacks are a little bit slower, but it's okay. I feel like it's better in the Rogue version of the builds because the 20% does stack with your sneak attack dice, which I think helps it out a little bit. So normally I would be worried about on this kind of build Shroud of the Wraith, but I could see also going Zombie. I can also see going Shroud of the Lich. Not as big of a fan, but +2 Constitution, +2 Intelligence are both really good, as well as the extra MMR. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But I would probably lean towards Wraith first. But I would not complain with anybody taking either form. Let's see. After that is where I'd go back to look at Battle Engineer stuff, to be perfectly honest. I would grab the low-hanging intelligence again. You know, you can pick up 2 more here really easily, especially if you did take Lich. So now you've got that 4 intelligence back again. You can pick up some intelligence here. And, you know, I'm rank 19. I managed to spend all my points, and I feel like I could still go a little bit further. You could take Versatile Adept to start grabbing more range power, even more range power. These things are pretty easy to kind of come by. You can't take a second capstone, but you can get up there pretty sturdily. That being said, if you'd like to do what I did, right? It says 15 action points remaining, which is good because what I want to do is I want to get up here to Memory of Flight. I want to get up here to True Power. These are all things that I find to be very good. So I take the Breath Weapon, and the Breath Weapon unlocks specifically more cold spell power. So that's how I move across, because I like grabbing the spell power first, and then I grab my Memory of Flight. So this is how I would level up my Dragonborn stuff, or I should say this is how I leveled up my Dragonborn stuff. Once I had everything else done, then I start worrying about Dragonborn. So I think it was around level 15, maybe 16, that I was finally able to take Memory of Flight, and I felt like it was right on time. Absolutely perfect. From there, I take Resilience. Then I start maxing this out again to grab the extra 30 cold spell power. And then I grab the spell DCs. That is literally how I leveled up in my enhancements. Let's see. Rounding out my feats, at 15 I took Quicken. At 17 is where you finally get to kind of figure out how you're casting spells and how you kind of want to land things. I'm a Necro wizard at heart. I want to be able to point at something and tell it to die, and I want it to die. Again, if we take a look at my Circle of Death, for example, Heighten always on, Quicken always on. My spell DC is not insane. Come on, show me what it is. It's like 40. Yeah, it's 40 right now. We get into a Reaper quest, it goes up quite a bit. Same thing with Finger of Death. Oh, this is not turned on. That should be turned on. I don't need Quicken for that, but that should be turned on. Power Word Kill is my choice of level 9 spells. Let's pull up a spell list, because the spell list does kind of matter for people. Level 1 becomes buffs. Level 2 becomes crowd control and miscellaneous. So obviously web, the shocking mini bolt, electric loop. Miscellaneous becomes blow out enemy gust of winds and resist energy. And then I do like having Snowball Swarm as kind of like your fireball for cold. Level 3 becomes those very exciting spells we talked about before. Haste, Displacement, Rage, and Lance. These are the order of importance. Like, the ability that I slotted these in, or the ability is the order that I focus them on, except for level 1 spells. After level 1, these get replaced all around for buffs. But after level 1, these are the spells in the order of importance for me. At level 4, I really like Ice Storm, and I really like Negative Energy Burst. I usually don't take them both at the same time until later. I like Negative Energy Burst right away at level, what? It doesn't matter. I like taking Negative Energy Burst because it does not split oozes, and it does a really good job of killing everything. It's very, very fast, especially if it's maximized, quickened, and empowered. Because the circle goes all the way around you, it is an excellent get out of a jam spell. Better than anything else. Right? So, it kills Reapers. It kills almost everything except for Undead. And if you get in that situation where you're running around in a circle and you find you're stuck or something, you can just panically reach over, hit that button. It'll pretty much kill everything, and it's got a quick enough cooldown. You can hit it twice or 3 times or 4 times if you need to, just to get everything dead out of the way. Then immediately when I have 4th level spells, I also will take Didor. Didor is very good. And then I kind of fight back and forth between Firewall and Ice Storm. I think Ice Storm is the better spell currently in DDO, but where Firewall is good, it's very good, even still, but the rest of the time it's very bad. So pick and choose your poison. Level 5 gets really soft. For me personally, I'm not a huge hold monster or hold person or hold fan. It's just never been my spell. But again, I'm a Necro guy. If you are a Enchanter guy, and I've had Enchanter guy lives, hold monster is, you can't beat it. Same thing with dominate person. If you are an Enchanter person, best spells you can possibly have. If not, if you're kind of like, eh, and in my opinion, these builds are kind of meh on that kind of effect, then you end up starting to take things that are much more utility, like protection from elements, single target dots for bosses. You may have seen, if you watch some of my videos, there was a boss that teleported around the screen. I had a hard time spotting the boss. The fact that I was able to dot her at one point and I was able to see the damage numbers go up above the screen was a really good way of tracking the boss monster, even though she teleport from location to location. And Cone of Cold is a lot like Negative Energy Burst, except forward. So with the Dragon's Breath and the Cone of Cold, you can kind of burst through a bunch of damage right in front of you while running backwards very easily. Level 6 is actually filled with a bunch of miscellaneous stuff that almost never gets cast. GH is probably the second most important spell. Circle of Death is probably the most important spell that I cast of level 6. But those are the two that I cast more than anything. I took Tensor's last level. Things kind of got rearranged, but that was the newest spell that I added. I've not cast it yet. I just didn't want to have the blank spell slot. But it is something that you should think about carrying around. The extra +4 to alchemical bonus to Constitution is very strong sometimes and can keep you alive. As always, I try to take the biggest powered cold spell or whatever elemental damage you're doing, and it's maximized and powered, etc. With the idea that if I see a Reaper and it's charging me and I don't have time to kill it with my crossbows, that I can just reach over and panic hit the button. I literally rotate it through the 8 spot on my keyboard here. So that has changed from Frost Lance to Cone of Cold to autos, Freezing Spear to Polar Ray, and now it's Iceberg. Just if there's a Reaper in my way, I want it dead. Those are the buttons I hit. Level 7, Finger of Death, Dancing Ball, the two most important spells at that level range. I do really like Power Word Blind. Power Word Blind things do take sneak attack damage. So if you miscellaneously have something that's giving you sneak attack dice or sneak attack damage or whatever, it really helps. Also, blind creatures have a like a 50% chance not to hit you because they're blind. Also really helpful. Auto's Irresistible Dance. Probably the best spell that this build could have at level 8. Quickened Dance, especially if you have a reasonable spell penetration from past lives and stuff like that. It works on Reapers. It works on everything short of a red name boss. Basically, it's just great. If you don't want to take autos, I'd highly recommend Power Word Stun or both. The reason I like Power Word Stun, same kind of situation as Power Word Blind. You hit it on something, it stands there, it gets wrecked. I don't know why I like this, but I dislike Hold Monster. Maybe it's because I know that Power Word Stun will always work. I don't know. And as you can tell, my order of importance for level 9 spells: Power Word Kill. Sometimes you just want a monster dead. Boop. Hit that button, goes away. This is specifically for this build are things like Stone Guard, Champs, stuff like that. Things that are not death warded, but are very, very difficult to kill for crossbow builds. And then, of course, like I've been saying, your biggest cold spell, maximized and powered, everything the whole way. So the overall strategy of this build is to be a ranged DPS. Okay? So you're getting all this extra damage factored in. You have this extra damage from your Rune Arm factored in. You have extra damage from your Spell Sword factor in. In my situation, you're wearing things like the Raven Eyes set. Even until level XP capped, I'm still wearing it because it's adding 3 artifact damage all the time. Is it necessary? Probably not. I could probably give up and wear a slightly easier intelligence item in this slot. But 3 extra damage per hit when you're dual crossbowing is 6 extra damage. It's so hard to give up 6, straight up 6 damage. You're talking about needing, if for intelligence, you're talking about needing 12 more intelligence than what you can already squeeze in. So for me, it was easier to just go ahead and use a trinket. I unlocked a Ion Stone, one of the Ion Stones, the Intelligence Ion Stone. So level 5 on, I basically wore it until I could put on this trinket at 15, and then it moved to 8. But yeah, it really, when you have 2 crossbows, it really maximizes how important it is to just get all this little trickle damage in, because that trickle damage gets doubled, right? Also, the same thing with like other kind of interesting effects. For example, the Nightshade's Venom, a 22 Fortitude save or go to sleep doesn't seem that impressive until you're doubling that up. That gives you double the number of opportunities to fail that save and go to sleep. Same thing with Constitution damage. 2 points of Constitution damage every ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk doesn't seem that impressive. But all of a sudden, if you're taking 4 away every time you go ka-chunk, ka-chunk, that is a significant difference. Especially when you follow things up with like a Finger of Death. The same thing by putting on your Law on your side dice, right? All these things add up exponentially because you're doubling the amounts of shots fired. What else is actually kind of important here that I'm forgetting on this build? I think that might be it. I think we kind of covered everything. Gear to kind of keep an eye out for. At 15, I would normally transition my gear to the Wall Watch set. In this case, I did not do it, but I would definitely look for that in the future. Other feats that you can look into for level 17 instead of a focus feat, a spell focus feat, you could hold on Quicken and move Quicken down to level 17. I don't like that personally. But you could do it, and you could take Insightful Reflexes. You may notice that my reflexes are not great. None of my saves are particularly special. It's just, I'm trying to stay away from the damage when it comes in. I talked about rune arms. The best rune arm for leveling is not the Quarantine, even though it is like probably my favorite after level 14. The best is probably the Dumpster Fire, and the reason is because of it's got 2 rune arm imbues. It has both bludgeoning 4 and fire 4, so you're actually picking up 4d6 points. No, more than that, right? 5d6 points of damage. 3d6 of its fire and 2d6 of its bludgeoning. But I really do like the occasional overcooling, just freezing guys. Alright, I think with that, we pretty much polished up how to build this this character. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat down below. I'll do my best to answer any questions. I will also do the best I can to do a write-up to post on the forums, although I still feel like a lot of people probably, they'll just go, oh, you're just playing intelligence-based inquisitive and move on, which I kind of feel that's probably the case. But the advantages of doing this kind of stuff, if you don't know the quests, very good. You have the ability to just empty your mana bar if you want to and not feel bad about it, because you're not relying on your mana bar the entire time. You usually, because you're intelligence-based, your trapping skills are usually very, very good. In my case, I don't even have a trapping item on me, but it'd be very easy to have a swappable ring or a swappable glove to cover my trapping skills. If I had the swappable goggles at level 17, it'd be very easy to use those as swap items to be able to cover all the traps all the way through from 1 to 20 easily. At level 20 plus, I'd probably use the trinket as long as I could from Kenwood Cove, or sorry, whatever the cove, whatever, it doesn't matter. The pirate event, whenever that comes back. So yeah, generally it kind of is fine. Because of the way that we're actually working our spell power here, you'll notice that my cold spell power is only like 50 or 60 higher than everything else. And that's because I'm using the Panasopic Circlet as my general potency item. And therefore, the difference between the potency here and the ability with the Quarantine is not as noticeable. This way I'm easily able to switch rune arms without losing a whole lot of spell power for the various spells. It's up to you how you want to look at it, but I think it's a worthwhile trade-off to me to be able to keep everything up a little bit higher. Instead of having one thing be super high, be able to keep everything from dropping as low as I switch rune arms around, because I'll switch them around a lot as situation requires. Again, as you can tell, cold whirling words for bludgeoning damage, force from Arm of the Orcons, a disrupting weapon, a smiting rune arm, again, just like your general best DPS. In the event that they're immune to cold, I'll switch into this in a heartbeat. And then I really like this ghost shot from the Astral Projector. Evil damage often can break DR of some things in a weird way and make bad guys go bye-bye very fast. Alright, with that, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you guys learned something. And yeah, if you like this video, please interact with it. I do appreciate it. We are trying to grow our YouTube channel this year. And the best way to help me out with that is to slam the like, subscribe, follow, etc. buttons. And yeah, leave a little comment if you can. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon. Toodles.